Before 1975, Robert Waldman and Alfred Urey teamed up on a musical adaptation of John Steinbeck's 1955 novel, East of Eden. The choice for such serious source material had not been seen before, mostly in Showboat, but the particular decision to adapt East of Eden into a 2-ish hour musical out of a 500 to 600 page book was maybe not the best idea in hindsight. But in 1968, Here's Where I Belong premiered for its one and only night on Broadway. After 20 out-of-town tryouts, the show triumphantly, maybe not so triumphantly, faded into obscurity, where, several years later, a gay boy living in Kansas City decided to do some research on it. It's me. I'm Gay Boys. Before we go any further, I just want to say hello to any old subscribers, hello to any new subscribers. Welcome to my Hodgepodge YouTube channel, where I talk about anything and anything that I find interesting. This is the 11th episode of my series called Thoughts on Theater, where I talk about any theatery thing, mostly shows that I find that are noteworthy, whether for their obscurity, their flopness, their stunt casting, or just other aspects of theater that I find fascinating. The last episode was a subscriber milestone where I ended up talking about Lucille Ball's one and only time on Broadway, and this episode is about the East of Eden flop musical. So there's a lot that can be found in this series, and if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below, and hit the subscription notification. Give this video a like, a thumbs up. Just let me know if you want to see more of this kind of content. Alright, and let's get back to the musings. So if we're going to talk adaptation, I think it's only fair that we go back to the beginning. Adam and Eve is a story about a husband, well, maybe not a husband, a man who was created by God, and then subsequently his wife named Eve, who was created from Adam, and they end up betraying God by doing something that they weren't told to do, eating an apple from the tree of knowledge, and then they give birth to sons Cain and Abel after they are cast out of Eden, and then there's jealousy ensues, and then Cain kills Abel out of spite, out of jealousy, and then from there the sins of the world just unravel and heap upon one another. And if anything, Cain could have just gone with a passive-aggressive sticky note instead of a big club to the head, so. But with that context, we can get to John Steinbeck's East of Eden, which is loosely based on the Book of Genesis. And I say loosely based. Loosely based. So, East of Eden was supposedly, according to Steinbeck, his magnum opus. His crowning achievement for literature. Everybody cites The Grapes of Wrath as his crowning achievement to literature, and I will have to say, while that story is a lot more pointed and a lot more focused is the word, that East of Eden is probably right up there in terms of importance, as much as a canon of literature composed entirely by white guys can be deemed important. So it's more of an allegory for the Book of Genesis more than a straight up retelling, although those lines kind of blur as we get into the last third of the book, which the musical as well as the 1955 film are based on. We'll get to the 1955 film. I know that's the big elephant in the room, but don't worry, we're gonna get to the film. So the book's God figure comes in the man named Sam Hamilton. Yeah, Sam Hamilton. Yep. And it takes place in the Salinas Valley of California, because where else would a Steinbeck vehicle take place? And Sam ends up becoming a mentor figure and friend to Adam Trask, who is the Adam equivalent. Adam meets and falls in love with a woman named Kathy, but he and his brother share some jealousy with her, and it's not totally clear. Kathy kind of sucks anyway. She is the most vile character Steinbeck has probably ever written, that I probably ever read. She is just not very sympathetic. So through some actual parentage, as well as her cheating on Adam with Adam's brother, she gives birth to 2 twins that they end up naming Caleb and Aaron. And Caleb is long for Cal. They call him Cal throughout the rest of the story. And from there, it's more of like kind of a straight up retelling of the Cain and Abel story. Aaron ends up dying when he enlists to go off to the war, which is spurred by Cal basically like stealing his steady girlfriend, Abra. But Cal only did this because he was trying to win his father's affection by helping reimburse him for his failed like refrigeration cars to help feed the war effort. And Aaron is like this perfect son. He never does like anything wrong. Anything that he does is always viewed as positive in Adam's eyes. But anything that Cal does always has some malicious intent behind it. And you know, it's kind of understandable because like Cal is always out and about, hopping on top of like trains and riding the trains to the far off towns, and he finds his mother who owns a cat house, a brothel basically, and she is like loaded, she is rich. But strangely, Cal doesn't want the riches. All he wants to know is who his mother is. He wants to know who his mother is, and he wants his father's affection, but in Adam's eyes, he literally cannot have both. But once he finds out who Kathy is, that like puts it all out of his mind, and he can just go back to being like a devoted son. Cal never really has his like Disney princess moment where he stands atop a cliffside and is just like, who am I? Where do I belong? So it's a good book. It is personally one of my favorites. I really enjoy Steinbeck's writing when he is not describing the California countryside, which he does often, especially in this book. Will Hamilton. It's Will Hamilton. Yeah, before you go and correct that, it's Will Hamilton. Hi, this is me making it textual in the video. Okay, so I'm just kind of like duffering about in this book, but like, most adaptations choose to use the latter half of the book as opposed to the first half, which gives like all the context for like the Adam, Kathy, Will Hamilton stuff. But like the drama surrounding the brothers and Abra and Adam and the mystery of like who their mom is are what people favor because that is the juicier part of the story. And that is where the 1955 film adaptation starring James Dean comes in. So, shifting the focus away from Adam and Will Hamilton, this version of the story casts Cal as the main character and like the anti-hero for the ages, which was really popular at the time and something that James Dean really is known for, and he is just iconic as like a rebel. As a misunderstood youth of all of the misunderstood youths. A notable difference in adaptation is the deletion of the character Lee, who is the Trask's Asian housekeeper, who is like the moral torchbearer of like the family, even though Adam likes to think he is, but Lee is really the one in charge and really the one helping the boys grow and mature and giving Cal all of the inside information that he needs to go find Kathy, or like, here's where you need to find the money, or this is who is rich. Because Lee has the history, he has the knowledge that he wishes to pass down that Adam is not willing to share anymore because that's in the past and we don't need to talk about the past. Past sucks. The 1955 film adaptation still keeps intact the motivations for Cal, namely that he wants to find his mother and he wants to make his father proud of him. There really is no feeling of him wanting to find a place where he belongs. It's just baffling to me that you would just like take that kind of motivation and just pivot it slightly into something that could be textually supported but is not the main goal of the story. On top of that, the character of Kathy is also made a little more sympathetic because we get to hear the backstory from her point of view and how she felt that like Adam was smothering her, keeping her in a place that she did not want to be, and trying to domesticate her, and she just did not want that. Kathy was a free spirit, and in those days, being a woman with a free spirit was cause for lobotomy. So, without the character of Lee, really, Cal just kind of finds these things out from other characters. His role is distributed amongst like the town sheriff and Kathy and Adam and others. And they also really amp up the anti-German sentiment because it takes place around like World War I, and there's this shopkeeper that kind of has like a secondary role that they like really like try to push. And I'm just like, Elliot Kazan, why did you do that? Why? Why can we have just included Lee? He's the best character in the whole shebang. But this is finally where the musical adaptation comes into play. So, there are no recordings of this show that I could find.
Allegedly.
There is a recording from like the bootleg company Blue Pair. They were originally contracted to record the entire show with, I think, Sony or Columbia recording, but after the show bombed, it flopped, they like broke off their contract, and the only existing recording was a really bad bootleg that Blue Pair
allegedly
pressed onto vinyl and released a limited number of copies. But Blue Pair is also known for like releasing vinyls of like Star Trek Season 3 bloopers or like bootlegs of other obscure shows. It basically is like the Criterion or the Arrow Video of the musical world. And it helps like give home media releases to shows that might not have otherwise had one. But that is the only recording of the show. And as far as I know, I have not been able to find any proof that this thing exists. Not one picture. I found a listing, but that was from like 1970. So that doesn't do me much good in 2021. So all we really have to go by are the programs and reviews of the day and help us piece together what the show would have been like. We also have remnants of songs that exist. We have the title song, which appears ripped straight from that bootleg, courtesy of Mr. Goldstone here on YouTube. We also have a 2010 recording by Heather McRae and Robert Waldman on the piano singing Waking Up Sun, which was the Act 1 finale.
Oh, look, I see the breaking of day. Morning is waking the sky. Oh, look, nighttime has faded away. He and his trouble have run, and here comes the waking up sun.
We also have the final song from Act 2 called We're a Home. Not recorded from the show, but recorded by like the Harry Connell Singers a year after, kind of slightly rearranged by the Connell Singers in order to like fit like the hip grooves of the time. I will play that song in full at the end of the video. And this is probably the only time since the show that any of these songs were like compiled together. And I wish I could find more. There are a few song titles that like really catch my interest. In Act 1, there's a song called Cal Gets By, which is sung by Cal. It's like the second song in the show. There are just like a few different songs and just stuff that I wish we had more information on, but without that bootleg, there's just no way of telling what context these songs were in. But if I can piece it together correctly, It basically follows like the last like third half of the book and focuses more on Cal as the main character. Also, fun, if you can see that in there, we have Lee as a character back in here. He's played by James Coco, a white man, but you know, he's here. So as I mentioned before, this show had some talent behind it that would have like tried to up its prestige. Obviously, we had John Steinbeck providing the source material. We had Alfred Urey and Robert Waldman doing the music and the lyrics. Terrence McNally did a version of the book, but before opening night, he asked his name to be removed because his script was basically not what was presented on stage anymore. They had Paul Rogers, who was Adam. And Paul Rogers, I believe at this point, had either won a Tony or was like nominated for something, but he was the one with the most clout in the cast. And I don't want to be disingenuous and say that like a bunch of the other characters are like played by nobodies, because they really aren't. They're all popular in their own time, but they just don't have like that longevity that somebody like James Dean playing the part of Cal had. So in terms of like comparing Cals, it's not really fair to compare Walter McGinn's Cal to, or McGinn, we'll say McGinn, because we have like a third of a book and a 2-hour movie and 1 3-minute song to compare these Cals. And so I'm not going to do that. That's totally unfair. But it appears that, because I've been teasing it, they shifted the focus from like Cal finding his mom and having his dad appreciate him into wanting him to find his own place in the world. Which isn't like a bad thing, especially considering that he's like overshadowed by Aaron a lot of the time, and he just does not feel as fulfilled in his life because there are pieces of it missing. I think maybe why I don't like it is that it rids the story of some of its ambiguity. It lets some of its characters off the hook. I don't know, and literally without like any more evidence other than like the songs that we have, which do not provide a lot of evidence, I for some reason feel that like a story with this kind of end goal in mind will somehow want to excuse Adam of literally the secrecy that he gave his children and the unfair shake that he might have given Cal, whether intentional or unintentional. But between you and me, it was totally intentional because Cal reminded him of Kathy and he didn't like that. Oh, yes, the controversial stuff. So on opening night, obviously, James Coco played the Asian servant Lee, and the show was protested by Asian American heritage groups saying like, ooh, yellowface, But for that, like, ew, the set design was actually designed by, let me find it, I want to say their name. Yes, the scenery, it says, is by Ming Cho Lee, which is one of the aspects of the production that got consistently good reviews. The scenic design, which I have yet to find pictures of, because this show is really hard to find pictures of, was apparently beautiful and really well done. No, the only pictures I can find are like that concept art on the playbill over there, and then a picture of them sitting down for dinner, which I assume is where they sang "We're Home." Tough to say. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know about this show, and as I continue to find more, I might make update videos, but like for now, all we have is speculation and what little evidence we do have that the show even existed. But at least Urey and Waldman would go on to create something more of a hit with Robert Bridegroom in 1975, as well as participate in projects that ended up not flopping. Oh, yes, I also forgot to say, Paul Rogers, who played Adam, was one of the performers that got consistently good reviews, who said his voice was strong and he acted with dignity. There's not much else about any other aspects of the show or any of the other actors and actresses who might have given bad or mediocre performances or what their vocals were like, but everybody knew that Paul Rogers gave a good performance in this trash show. Alright, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thank you for showing up yet again. This is the 11th video in this series. If you have any ideas for topics I should cover next, please put them down in the comments below. The next video I'm going to do is going to be about the cult films that you'll always see up here behind me. I'm just going to be going through them and giving them each like a brief review and a brief rundown and ranking them from least obscure to most obscure. So, stay tuned for that and go out there, stay sexy.